From Dublin on the east coast of Ireland, we fly to Edinburgh on the east coast of Scotland. We arrive at our hotel, the Kimpton Charlotte Square in Edinburgh's New Town. David Russell, our guide, meets us and we plan tomorrow's activities over drinks. David explains that Edinburgh's Old Town and New Town were listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1995 in recognition of the unique characteristics of Old Town with its medieval street layout and the planned Georgian New Town. The UNESCO site is shown on the map bordered in purple. Tomorrow we're going to walk from one end to the other and back. In the morning we meet David at our hotel, which is in the heart of Newtown. Development of Newtown began in 1766 and is characterized by Georgian architecture and a grid street layout. We're walking along Princes Street to Calton Hill. Our first impression is that there are a lot of churches in Edinburgh. Everywhere you look, you see spires. Edinburgh Castle looms over the city from its rock promontory. There's been a royal castle on the rock since at least the 12th century. Princes Street Gardens were created in 1820 when the Nor Loch, essentially a moat for Edinburgh Castle, was drained. The gardens are home to all kinds of memorial statuary. This one was given by Scottish Americans in 1927 to honor Scots who had served in World War I. There's quite a story behind this statue. It's a memorial to Wojtek, the soldier bear. Wojtek was bought as a young cub in Iran by Polish soldiers who were being evacuated from Russia. In order to feed him, he was enlisted as a private in the Polish army. He accompanied the soldiers to Italy. During the Battle of Monte Cassino, he helped move crates of ammunition and became a celebrity. After the war, he was mustered out of the army and lived out his days in Edinburgh Zoo. This is the Royal Scottish Academy, which promotes contemporary Scottish visual arts. It's built on the Mound, an artificial hill created from dirt excavated from the foundations of Newtown. Jenner's on Princes Street was Scotland's oldest independent department store. It closed in December 2020, a casualty of COVID and the internet. There are plans to restore and renovate the historic building. This Victorian Gothic tower is a monument to Scottish author Sir Walter Scott. Also in Princes Street Gardens is a monument to David Livingstone, the Scottish physician, missionary, and explorer. Princes Street is the home to the General Register House, built between 1774 and 1788 as the headquarters of the National Archives of Scotland. We have arrived at Calton Hill, at the east end of Princes Street. The view from the hill is one of the best in the city. Over the years, it's been the site of a cemetery and a prison. Today, it's the home of several memorials. This is a monument to Douglas Stewart, a Scottish philosopher. This is a monument to Admiral Horatio Nelson, who defeated the French and Spanish fleets at Trafalgar. The columns next to the Nelson Monument are the National Monument of Scotland, dedicated to Scottish soldiers and sailors who died in the Napoleonic Wars. At the top of Calton Hill is the observatory. During the early 20th century, it contained a 22-inch refracting telescope. One last panorama, looking out over Newtown to the Firth of Forth. We're making our way down off Calton Hill to Canongate, the old and the new, and the Waverley train station, from the foot of Calton Hill. This impressive neoclassical building is the old Royal High School. Since 1968, it's housed various government offices. We're at the east end of the Royal Mile. but can't get close to Holyrood Palace. Queen Elizabeth died at Balmoral Castle on September 8th. Today is September 13th, and she's lying in state at St. Giles Cathedral on the Royal Mile. The entire High Street has been cordoned off with police every 30 feet. This is the Scottish Parliament building. Note the sniper on the roof. The Canongate toll booth is a historic landmark of the Old Town. It was built in 1591 as a toll booth when Canongate was a separate borough outside the town walls of Edinburgh. We decided to explore Canongate Kirkyard, which dates to 1691. It's the last resting place for merchants, poets, and soldiers. Six of James Wharton's children and their spouses died before age 26. This is the memorial to the economist Adam Smith, author of The Wealth of Nations. We make our way up the Royal Mile, which is the name given for the high street between Holyrood Palace and Edinburgh Castle. Police are out in force. David remarks that he didn't realize there were that many police in all of Scotland. This is the heart of Old Town. Most of the buildings here date from the 17th and 18th centuries. While the buildings are old, most of the storefronts are now pubs or souvenir shops. St. Giles Cathedral was begun in the 14th century and completed in the early 16th century. Queen Elizabeth is lying in state, and there's a long line of people waiting to file past her casket. The Queen's casket will be transported to the airport with great pomp and ceremony this afternoon. The TV crews have already staked out the prime viewing locations. We're having lunch at the Witchery. Near this site, during the 16th and 17th century, hundreds of men and women were burned at the stake as witches. The restaurant is located in a 16th century merchant's house featuring rich Baroque decor. Since Edinburgh Castle is closed due to the Queen's death, we walk around the Castle Rock and back to Princes Street. Victoria Street was built between 1829 and 1834. It connects Castle Hill to Grassmarket. Grassmarket was a horse and cattle market as early as 1477. Today it's an entertainment district full of restaurants and pubs. We're just below Edinburgh Castle. The flag on the castle is at half-staff in honor of the Queen. And we're back at St. Cuthbert's Church, which we saw from a different angle this morning. The spire dates to 1789. And just next door is the Church of St. John the Evangelist, dating to 1818. So that was Old Town. Now we're heading into New Town for a completely different cityscape. Georgian townhouses line the street, ending at St. Mary's Episcopal Cathedral, dating to 1879. Randolph Crescent is the entrance to the Moray Estates, one of several early 19th century building ventures that make up Newtown. Kirkbrae House was originally an inn dating to the 1680s. The house eventually was owned by James Stewart, who made a fortune operating horse cabs, and he spent his wealth rebuilding the house in the baronial style of the late 19th century. A 17th century carved sundial on the corner of the Kirkbrae House. Bell's Brae House is a 16th century miller's house. It was restored in 1948 and is one of the oldest inhabited residences in the city. We're at the Dean Village, and we'll be following the Waters of Leith. Dean Village is one of the villages that surround the original royal borough of Edinburgh. The village was described in 1535 as a miller's village. At one time, there were 11 grain mills, drawing their power from the waters of Leith. The area remained a separate village until the 19th century, but due to more modern mills, the business was in decline. Starting in the 1970s, redevelopment and restoration began, converting workers' cottages, warehouses, and mill buildings to residences. Today, due to its tranquil setting and proximity to the city, it's a highly desirable residential location. Picturesque Water of Leith Bridge was built in the early 18th century on the site of ancient crossings. We follow the Water of Leith walkway along the river. The footpath runs for 12¼ miles along the watercourse. From the Waters of Leith, we turn south and walk through the Georgian townhouses of the Moray Estate. And we're back at our hotel, which is 7 interconnected townhouses. It's time for dinner and packing. We're headed to the Highlands tomorrow.